They sent an ultimatum. We sent a mirror. Admiral Eva Rostova stood on the command deck of the Vindication, her knuckles white where she gripped the command rail. Before her, the star-dusted blackness of the Kepler 186F system was marred by a single arrogant point of light. The Scryer dreadnought, voice of inevitability. Its ultimatum hung in the void, a blade held to the throat of the civilian convoy huddled behind her fleet. Surrender the colony's entire deuterium reserve, or the Scryer ascendancy would pacify the system by force. The timer, a stark crimson glyph on the main tactical display, read 020000. 2 hours until a choice became a consequence. Fleetmind confirmed their posture. Rostova's voice was a low burn, a stark contrast to the quiet hum of the bridge. The deck beneath her feet vibrated with the steady thrum of the ship's fusion heart, a reassuring pulse against the encroaching dread. Confirmed, Admiral. The synthesized voice of Lysias, the fleet's AI, was calm and crystalline. The voice of inevitability maintains a hard burn holding station at the system's primary gravity well. All weapon ports are open. They are broadcasting their ultimatum on all civilian military channels. They believe they hold the perfect siege position. Lysias's avatar. A simple geometric lattice of light pulsed gently beside the tactical display. The Scryers were textbook bullies, always choosing the most direct path to dominance, assuming their enemy would fold under pressure. They had never faced a human fleet before. Rostova's gaze flickered to a side screen, showing the civilian convoy. 23 lumbering transports filled with families' terraforming equipment and the fragile hope of a new beginning. They were slow, unarmed, and utterly dependent on her third fleet. The Scryers knew this counting on human compassion as a predictable weakness. They saw a shield and assumed the hand holding it would tremble. Commander Gion's status on the mirror arrays, Rostova asked, turning to her tactical officer. Gian, a sharp-featured woman with an almost preternatural calm, nodded. Arrays Alpha through Delta are deploying from the fleet's port side, Admiral. They are masked by standard emission cloaks. The Scryers are reading us as a standard defensive formation, nothing more. The console before her glowed with the soft green of deployed assets, a constellation of silent sentinels slipping into the dark. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. It was the core tenet of Rostova's command, a philosophy born from a history of refusing to bow to tyrants. You don't answer an ultimatum with a plea. You answer it with a lesson in mathematics. Their arrogance would be their undoing. A young ensign on the lower deck adjusted the environmental controls, a faint hiss of recycled air whispering through the vents. He glanced at a small framed photo taped to his console, a smiling woman and a small child waving from a sun-drenched park on Earth. He was here to make sure they, and millions like them, never had to face a Scryer ultimatum. The stakes were always personal, a universe away from the cold calculus of orbital mechanics. Lysias Rostova set her eyes fixed on the Scryer dreadnought. Begin the first feint. Let's see how they react to a little pressure. Send in the decoy's signature profile matching our heavy cruisers. Let's make them think we're testing their forward line. Acknowledged, Admiral. Decoy Squadron Gamma is away. The lattice of light that was Lysias flickered once. On the tactical display, a cluster of icons detached from the main fleet formation and began a slow, deliberate burn toward the enemy. They were nothing more than shaped plasma fields and emitters, but to Scryer sensors, they would look like a challenge. A foolish one, perhaps, but a challenge nonetheless. They think we are fools. Let them think it a little longer. The Scryer dreadnought didn't even bother to fire its main cannons. Instead, a ripple of smaller energy bursts lanced out, shredding the decoys into incandescent vapor. It was a show of contemptuous force, a swatting of flies. The message was clear. We see you. You are nothing. Predictable. Jian murmured, her fingers dancing across her console. They're overconfident. Their point defense targeting is sloppy. They didn't even bother to verify the mass signatures. Their doctrine is built on overwhelming force. Not precision, Rostova replied, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. They believe one big hammer can solve every problem. The scent of ozone, faint and sharp, wafted from a nearby power conduit, a reminder of the energies coiled within the Vindication's hull. Lysias, how did the mirror arrays handle that energy's discharge? Rostova asked. Arrays Alpha and Bravo absorbed 94% of the ambient energy splash, Admiral. They are charged and stable. The Scryers are bathing our hidden assets in free power. A perfectly balanced ledger awaits them. Rostova watched the timer tick down. 01 and 45:12. The Scryers hadn't moved their single ship a monument to their own self-importance. They thought this was a simple siege, a test of will. They didn't understand they were in a classroom and the lesson was about to begin. Commander Valerius Rostova addressed her communications officer. Open a channel to the voice of inevitability. Unencrypted. Let the whole system listen. Channel open, Admiral. Rostova stepped forward, her shadow falling across the tactical display. This is Admiral Eva Rostova of the Terran Alliance Third Fleet. I have received your ultimatum. You have made a grave miscalculation. She paused, letting the silence hang in the void. We are not here to negotiate the terms of our surrender. We are here to present you with an invoice. The reckoning had begun. The Scryer commander, a hulking being whose image flickered onto the main screen, sneered. His voice was a guttural rasp, layered with digital distortion. Your posturing is meaningless, human. The ledger is simple, your deuterium or your lives. The clock is ticking. The transmission cut a final act of dismissal. He's proud, Jian noted. He wants this to be a public victory for the Ascendancy. And we will make it one, Rostova said softly. Just not his. The deck plates hummed a low resonant frequency that seemed to echo the Admiral's resolve. The air carried the faint, clean scent of chilled coolant, a constant companion in the heart of a warship. Rostova turned her attention back to the tactical map. The first mystery had been seeded. Why would a human fleet, clearly outgunned by a dreadnought, send such easily destroyed decoys? The Scryers had their answer. Incompetence. That was the reveal they were meant to see. The payoff was yet to come. Lysias, deploy the next wave of decoys. This time, have them mimic the convoy transports. Let's see if we can appeal to their cruelty. A calculated risk, Admiral Lysias noted. It may provoke them into firing on the real convoy. They won't. Rostova stated with certainty. They need the convoy as leverage, but they will enjoy shooting at their likenesses. It will confirm their sense of superiority. Brace for their vanity. Inside one of the civilian transports, the Stargazer, a young girl named Alara, pressed her face against the thick plexiglass of a viewport. She watched the distant, silent flashes of light as the first decoys were destroyed. Her mother came and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, sweetie. The nice people in the warships are just making some fireworks to scare the bullies away. Alara wasn't scared. She was fascinated. She trusted the silent, powerful ships that stood between her family and the Galactic. As the second wave of decoys, this time shaped like the helpless transports, moved forward. The Scryer dreadnought responded with another volley. The energy beams were just as powerful, but there was a different quality to them, a kind of vicious glee. The scryers were making a point. Energy splash captured Lysias reported calmly. Mirror arrays at 140% capacity. We are now running on their power, Admiral. Jian's fingers flew across her console. Their targeting is still lazy. They're firing from a fixed position, assuming we have no long-range capabilities to threaten them. An assumption we encouraged, Rostova said. Now let's show them the first column on our invoice. She took a deep breath, the filtered air cool in her lungs. The console glare reflected in her eyes, turning them into chips of cold, hard light. Lysias, bring Mirror Array Alpha online. Target the scryer's primary sensor mast. Use a focused, low-power beam. I don't want to destroy it. I want to blind it. Hold the line. Executing, Lysias replied. Out in the void, a section of empty space shimmered. For a fraction of a second, a vast, invisible parabola of energy focused the captured power from the scryer's own weapons into a single, needle-thin beam. It was silent, invisible, and traveled at the speed of light. On the voice of inevitability's bridge, a klaxon blared. A shower of sparks erupted from a primary sensor console. The scryer commander roared in frustration, his image on Rostova's screen flickering with static. Report, the scryer bellowed at his crew. Primary sensors are offline, some kind of reflected energy surge. It bypassed our shields completely. Impossible. Rostova watched her expression unreadable. Commander Jian, what's their status? They're blind on their forward arc. Admiral, they're scrambling to recalibrate their secondary sensors. They're confused. The energy signature doesn't match any known weapon. Good. The first entry on the ledger had been made, a warning shot fired with their own ammunition. The teaching continues. The timer now read 1:28:43. The scryers had been so certain of their position, of their power. Now, a seed of doubt had been planted. How could a sensor mast be disabled by a weapon that left no trace? The mystery was presented. They're launching a probe, Jian reported, pointing to a small icon detaching from the dreadnought. It's moving to investigate the space where the beam originated. Let them look, Rostova said. Lysias, shift the array's position by 5,000 kilometers. Let their probe find nothing but empty space. Position shifted, Admiral. The array is once again invisible. The scryers were looking for a gun, a ship, a tangible threat. They did not understand that the threat was the space itself folded and focused by human ingenuity. They were fighting a ghost, a reflection of their own aggression. This is how we set the board. Rostova felt the subtle shift in the deck's vibration as the Vindication adjusted its own position, a slow, careful dance in the dark. The faint hum of the life support system was a constant, steadying presence. She allowed herself a moment to think about the people on the convoy. They were not just assets to be protected. They were the reason the Third Fleet existed. They were farmers, scientists, dreamers. They were the future. Admiral Valerius interrupted her thoughts. The scryer is hailing us again. Their commander looks displeased. On screen, the scryer's face was a mask of fury. What trickery is this, human? What weapon did you fire? As I said, Rostova replied, her voice even and calm. An invoice. That was the first item, a demonstration of the cost of your arrogance. You provided the power. We simply returned it. Consider it a refund. Insolence. You think your parlor tricks can stop the might of the Ascendancy. You have only sealed your fate. The scryer commander gestured, and the dreadnought's main cannon began to glow with stored energy. They choose to escalate. So be it. He's preparing to fire the main weapon, Jian said, her voice tight. Target is the center of our fleet formation. He means to break us in a single blow, Rostova observed. Lysias, what is the charge time? Estimated 30 seconds to full power, Admiral. The energy buildup is massive, far more than our arrays can absorb directly. They won't have to, Rostova said. Her eyes met Jian's. It's time for the flip. Bring all mirror arrays online. Create the lattice. Jian's fingers blurred across her controls. All arrays are active. We are forming the reflective corridor. It's a high-risk maneuver, Admiral. If our calculations are off by even 1,000th of a degree, your calculations are never off, Commander. Their power will be their prison. The space between the human fleet and the Scryer dreadnought seemed to warp. A network of invisible energy fields powered by the Scryer's own wasted energy snapped into place. It formed a corridor, a tunnel of precisely angled reflective surfaces, undetectable to any sensor. One end was pointed directly at the dreadnought's main cannon. The other end was pointed directly back at the dreadnought's bridge. Aboard the Stargazer, Ilara's mother pulled the viewport shields down. Okay, fireworks are over for a bit, sweetie. The low, almost subliminal thrum of the distant warships was the only sign of the drama unfolding. The crew of the transport went about their duties with practiced calm, their trust in the Third Fleet absolute. They knew the stories of Admiral Rostova, the woman who fought with numbers and light. 15 seconds to discharge, Lysias announced. The fleet mind's voice was devoid of emotion, a pure statement of fact. Hold steady, Rostova commanded, her voice ringing with authority. The bridge was silent save for the soft chime of consoles and the distant thrum of the reactor. The air was thick with anticipation. He's firing, Jian whispered. A torrent of pure white-hot energy wide enough to vaporize a cruiser erupted from the voice of inevitability. It crossed the void in an instant, a declaration of ultimate power. But it never reached the human fleet. It reached the mirror. The beam hit the entrance to the invisible lattice and was caught. It was turned reflected and focused its own immense energy, guiding it down the corridor of folded space. For the Scryers, it looked as if their ultimate weapon had simply vanished into nothingness. For a microsecond, there was confusion on their bridge. Then, for another microsecond, there was dawning horror. The beam exited the lattice precisely where Lysias had aimed it. It was a perfect reflection, a karmic loop closed at the speed of light. The Scryer dreadnought's own weapon returned to sender, struck its command tower. The ledger is balanced. The explosion was silent, a brilliant expanding flower of light and debris where the dreadnought's bridge had been. The main cannon its firing sequence severed went dark. The massive ship began to drift, its lights flickering and dying. It was a colossal beast mortally wounded by its own fang. On the bridge of the Vindication, no one cheered. There was only a collective held breath. The glare from the distant explosion washed over the command deck, casting long, stark shadows. Rostova watched her face a stone mask. Status of the Scryer vessel. She asked, her voice quiet. Catastrophic damage to the command and control sections, Lysias reported. Multiple secondary explosions along the dorsal spine. Life support appears to be failing in the forward third of the ship. They are neutralized. Are they broadcasting a distress signal? Valerius checked his console. Negative, Admiral. Only automated damage control signals. No organized communication. The first major escalation was over. The Scryer's ultimatum was broken. Their siege weapon turned into a monument to their own folly. But the cost was real. The heat flash from the returned beam had washed over Rostova's lead ships. Damage report, Rostova ordered. Minor heat scoring on the bows of the Vindication, and the resolute Admiral Jian reported. Shields held, but we'll need to run a full diagnostic on the forward sensor arrays. 2 crew members on Deck 7 reported flash burns from an overloaded conduit. Medics are on site. They are stable. Victory always has a price. Rostova nodded, accepting the cost. It was minimal, a testament to the plan's success. But it was not zero. The lives of her crew were the most important figures on her ledger. The timer on the main screen had frozen at 001:10:21. The ultimatum was dead. The silence that followed was heavier than the battle itself. The mystery of the invisible weapon had been revealed, and the payoff was a crippled dreadnought and a saved convoy. Now came the next phase. The Scryer doctrine did not account for mercy. They saw it as a flaw, an exploitable weakness. Rostova was about to teach them that mercy was not the absence of strength, but the precise application of it. "Lysias," she said, her voice softening slightly. "Scan the wreckage for life pods. Log their positions. Commander Valerius, prepare a broadcast, system-wide, to be delivered in 5 minutes." "What are your orders?" Admiral Valerius asked. "We are not the Scryers." Rostova stated simply, "We do not leave the wounded to die in the dark, not even our enemies. We will offer them aid." This was the core of the conflict triangle, her own moral line against the Scryers' brutal doctrine, with Lysias's pure calculus as the fulcrum. Their doctrine is broken. Ours must hold. "Admiral, my calculations suggest a 92% probability that any rescue attempt will be perceived as a trap," Lysias noted. "The Scryer ascendancy has never accepted aid from a non-allied power. Their doctrine dictates self-destruction over capture or obligation." "I am aware of that," Lysias Rostova said. "But the offer must be made. The entire system is watching. The convoy is watching. Our own crews are watching. We must show them who we are." The AI's lattice avatar pulsed. "Your logic is irregular, but I comprehend the strategic value of the moral position. The long-term implications are significant. That's the difference between calculation and command," Lysias Rostova replied. "Prepare the broadcast." The second act of the drama was about to unfold. The Scryers had issued an ultimatum based on power. Rostova would now issue a counteroffer based on principle. And in doing so, she would set a trap far more complex and inescapable than a simple corridor of mirrors. They built a cage of fear. We will build a door of choice. Aboard the crippled voice of inevitability, chaos reigned. In the auxiliary bridge, a junior officer, Sub-Commander Kyle, found himself in command. The main bridge was gone, along with the entire senior command staff. His ears rang, and the reek of burnt metal and ozone filled the air. Emergency lights cast a sickly red glow over the panicked crew. "Report, Kyle," barked his voice raw. "The humans. They reflected our own beam back at us." A sensor technician stammered, his face pale. "It's impossible, but it happened. Life support is critical in sectors 1 through 12, another officer called out. "We have multiple hull breaches. We are venting atmosphere." Kyle gripped a console to steady himself. The entire foundation of his worldview had been shattered. The ascendancy was invincible. Its weapons were absolute. And yet they had been defeated by a handful of smaller ships without a single shot being fired at them. They had shot themselves. It was absurd, humiliating, and terrifying. Then Valerius's broadcast began. Rostova's face appeared on their one remaining functional view screen. Her expression was not triumphant or gloating. It was solemn. "This is Admiral Rostova to the surviving crew of the Scryer dreadnought. Your command structure is gone. Your vessel is critically damaged. We are reading multiple life support failures and hull breaches. Each word is a test. We do not wish to see you die." Rostova continued. "We are dispatching medical and rescue shuttles. We will provide aid, evacuate your wounded, and help you stabilize your ship. We offer you this choice life under the tenets of galactic salvage and rescue law, or death, according to the dictates of your silent commanders." Kyle stared at the screen. This was a trick. It had to be. A way to capture them, to humiliate them further. He looked around at the faces of his crew. He saw fear. He saw desperation. He saw young scryers who did not want to die in a cold, broken metal shell because of a failed doctrine. "It is a trick," one of his officers snarled. "The Ascendancy teaches us that mercy from an enemy is a lie." "The Ascendancy is 1,000 light years away," Kael retorted, his voice shaking but firm. "Our command is dead. Look around you. Our choice is to die for a doctrine that failed, or live because of an enemy who offers this." The choice hung in the red-lit chaos of the bridge. It was the ultimate test. Did they cling to the brutal ideology that had led them to this ruin? Or did they take a leap of faith? We opened the door. They must choose to walk through it. Rostova watched her screen, waiting. This was the true battlefield now. Not the void between ships, but the space between fear and hope in the hearts of her enemies. She had flipped the tactical situation. Now she was attempting to flip the ideological one. Admiral Jian said quietly, "Movement from the Dreadnought's hangar bay." Every eye on the Vindication's bridge snapped to the tactical display. A single icon was emerging from the crippled ship. It wasn't a fighter. It wasn't a weapon. "It's a shuttle," Lysias stated, broadcasting a standard unencrypted approach signal. "It is a surrender." A ripple of relief went through the bridge. It was quiet, professional, but deeply felt. The deck plates beneath them seemed to settle the ship itself, exhaling a held breath. "They've accepted," Valerius breathed. "One shuttle has Rostova corrected." Her eyes still locked on the display. "There are thousands of crew on that ship. This is just the beginning." The account is not yet settled. As the first scryer shuttle moved slowly toward the human fleet, a new signal appeared on the tactical display. A long-range signal coming from the edge of the system. Admiral Jian's voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet relief. "Multiple warp signatures detected, deep of them. Scryer energy profiles." "They're big." Rostova's jaw tightened. The scryers must have had a rapid response fleet hiding in a nearby nebula. They had received the Dreadnought's automated distress signal and were coming to investigate. And they would arrive to find their flagship crippled and its crew accepting aid from humans. This changed everything. The second escalation had arrived. "Lysias, time to arrival." Rostova demanded. 20 minutes, Admiral. They are on a high-velocity intercept course. Their fleet composition appears to be 2 heavy cruisers and 3 destroyers. A punitive fleet. A fleet designed to enforce doctrine, not to rescue, but to punish failure. Rostova understood instantly. They were not coming to save the voice of inevitability. They were coming to destroy it and its crew, to erase the shame of their defeat. They have come to bury their mistake. The moral test had just become a tactical nightmare. Rostova now had a crippled enemy ship, a civilian convoy, and a flotilla of traumatized scryer survivors to protect from a fresh wave of zealots. "Commander Valerius, get a message to that shuttle. Tell them to turn back. Get their people into life pods now. All of them. Admiral, their own fleet is going to execute them for surrendering Rostova," stated her voice like ice. They won't risk the contamination of their crews witnessing a human act of mercy. She looked at the tactical display, her mind racing. The open corridor trap had worked once, but the new fleet would have seen the dreadnought's data logs. They would know about the mirrors. A new plan was needed. A new lesson had to be taught. We must become the shield for those we defeated. In a quiet corner of the Vindication's biolab, a medic was carefully tending to the flash burns on a young crewman's arm. "You'll be fine, son," she said gently. "Just a bit of light burn." "You were lucky." The crewman nodded, wincing. Did we win, ma'am?" he asked. The medic smiled. "We upheld the standard, son. That's always a win." The quiet compassion of the scene was a universe away from the cold, hard decisions being made on the bridge. Rostova turned to her AI. "Lysias, the new Scryer fleet. They know about the lattice. They will be expecting a trick with light and energy, so we will give them something else entirely. Admiral, our conventional weapon stores are limited." The AI pointed out. "A direct engagement with 5 warships is statistically unfavorable." "This won't be a direct engagement," Rostova countered. "This will be a lesson in physics." Her eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. She was looking at the board, but she was seeing 3 moves ahead. "Jian," she ordered, "reposition the fleet. Place us between the crippled dreadnought and the inbound Scryer force. All ships full power to forward shields. And get our rescue shuttles out there now. I want every single Scryer survivor we can pull from that wreck on our ships before that fleet arrives. They will learn the weight of our mercy." The order was audacious. She was turning her fleet into a literal shield, a shield for her former enemies against their own allies. It was an act that defied every conventional rule of warfare. "Admiral, this is an extreme risk," Jian cautioned, though her hands were already flying to execute the commands. "The highest risks yield the greatest returns," Commander Rostova said. "They are coming here to enforce a brutal doctrine. We will show them and the entire galaxy what a humane doctrine looks like. We will show them that we value the lives of their people more than they do." The human fleet moved a graceful, coordinated ballet of warships, pivoting to face the new threat. Their rescue shuttles, small and swift, darted toward the crippled dreadnought, their docking lights blinking like fireflies in the vast darkness. The timer on the main screen was gone, replaced by an estimated intercept clock for the new Scryer fleet. 15 Horizont minutes. The board was reset. The stakes were raised. The first lesson was over. The final exam was about to begin. They came to teach fear. They will learn respect. On the auxiliary bridge of the Voice of Inevitability, Sub-Commander Kael received Rostova's warning. His blood ran cold. She was right. The Ascendancy would not tolerate this failure, this contamination. The relief fleet was an execution squad. "Abandon ship," he roared. "All hands to the life pods. The fleet is not here to save us. They are here to cleanse us." Panic erupted, but it was a panic with purpose. Scrambling to obey, the crew flooded the corridors, heading for the escape pod base. They had been offered a choice by their enemy, and now that choice was being violently revoked by their own side. In that moment, their loyalty to the Ascendancy fractured, perhaps forever. Rostova watched the life pods blossom from the wounded dreadnought, like seeds from a dying flower. "Lysias, vector them in. Guide them to our hangar bays." "Acknowledged. Hangar bays 3 through 7 are prepared to receive Scryer survivors. Medical teams are on standby." The AI's voice remained calm, a point of stability in the escalating crisis. The console lights flickered across the bridge, painting the crew's tense faces in shades of blue and gold. The low hum of the ship seemed to intensify, a beast gathering its strength. "The Punitive fleet is accelerating," Gian reported. "They'll be in weapons range in 10 minutes. "They're angry," Rostova murmured. "Good. Anger makes people sloppy." She gestured to the main tactical display. "Lysias, I want you to project a shell of hard light and sensor ghosts around the entire rescue operation. Make it look like our fleet is twice its actual size. Pack the space with false energy readings. Weapon signatures drive flares. Everything. You wish to intimidate them." "Admiral, I wish to confuse them," Rostova corrected. "They know about the mirrors, so they'll be looking for an energy trap. We'll give them so many false signals they won't know where to look. While they're trying to solve the wrong puzzle, we'll be solving the right one." A new deception for a new challenge. The space around the human fleet and the crippled dreadnought began to fill with phantoms. Cruisers and destroyers that didn't exist flickered into being on scryer sensors. Energy spikes flared and vanished. It was a masterpiece of electronic warfare, a storm of lies broadcast into the void. The approaching scryer fleet slowed its advance. On their lead cruiser's bridge, the new commander, a grim-faced zealot named Malachor, stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human fleet seemed to have doubled in size. Was this another trick of light, a bluff? "Analyze those signatures," Malachor snarled. "They're ghosts, Commander." His tactical officer replied after a moment. "Sophisticated, but the mass readings are nil. It's a deception," Malachor sneered. "A coward's tactic. They hide behind illusions because they lack true strength. All ships advance. Target the dreadnought first. Erase the shame. Then we will deal with the humans. They see the ghosts but miss the machine." Rostova anticipated this. He's ignoring the feint and focusing on his primary objective, destroying the evidence, she said. Predictable. Doctrine-bound to the very end. She turned to Gian. "Are the survivors clear?" "The last of the life pods are entering our hangars now, Admiral. We have over 2,000 scryer crew members aboard our ships." The number was staggering. A wave of refugees rescued from a ship they had served on, now seeking shelter on the ships they had been sent to destroy. "Then our moral obligation is met," Rostova said, her voice hardening. "Now we meet our tactical one." The gentle hum of the bridge was now overlaid with the sharp staccato pings of the tactical plot, updating as the enemy fleet drew closer. The air smelled of clean, recycled oxygen and the faint metallic tang of stressed power systems. Lysias, the Admiral, commanded. "The convoy. I want them to begin a slow burn away from the engagement zone. But I want them to vent plasma from their engines just trace amounts. Create a nebula." "A plasma nebula?" Admiral Lysias questioned. "The objective is unclear. The scryers are expecting a fight based on light and energy," Rostova explained. "We are going to give them a fight based on mass and kinetics. They're looking for mirrors. Let's give them an anchor." This was the new mystery. Why vent valuable plasma? The reveal was coming. They prepared for a duel of light. They will face a hammer of iron. The civilian transport's great, slow-moving beasts of burden began to vent glowing clouds of ionized gas. It spread slowly, a beautiful shimmering veil of turquoise and magenta hanging in space between the human fleet and the crippled dreadnought. It was ethereal, harmless. Malachor's fleet didn't even register it as a threat. It was engine wash waste gas. Irrelevant. They pushed through it, their shields easily deflecting the thin particles, their focus entirely on the two targets ahead. The human fleet and the disgraced dreadnought. "They've taken the bait," Gian said, a note of awe in her voice. "They see a screen." "Not a medium," Rostova replied. "Lysias, the mirror arrays. Don't form a lattice this time. I want you to use them as lenses. Wide beam, low intensity. I want you to energize that entire plasma cloud. Superheat it. Turn it from a veil into a wall. Executing, Lysias said. Energizing the plasma field. The invisible arrays poured energy into the nebula. The cloud of gas, once diffuse and beautiful, began to glow with ferocious intensity. It became a superheated, turbulent mass of stellar matter, an artificial, stellar corona hanging in the void. On Malakor's bridge, alarms screamed. "We're inside some kind of energy field," his science officer yelled. "Our forward shields are overheating. The plasma is sticky. It's clinging to the hulls." "Push through," Malakor bellowed. "It's another light show, but this show had weight." Now the anchor, Rostova said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Gian, fire the gravitic projectors. Full power. Target the center of that plasma cloud." The Vindication and its escorts unleashed not beams of light or energy, but focused waves of intense gravity. The projectors were designed for asteroid towing and maneuvering in dense fields, not for combat. But Rostova was not using them as a weapon. She was using them as a tool. The gravitic beams hit the superheated ionized plasma cloud, and the laws of physics took over. The plasma, already turbulent, was now caught in a gravitic vice. It began to compress, to spin, to collapse in on itself. The process was terrifyingly fast. What was a moment ago a cloud of gas became a raging vortex, and then, with a final blinding flash of light, it became something else. A star. A small, temporary, but furiously hot protostar, born in an instant from a freighter's exhaust and a human's command. It ignited directly in the path of the charging Scryer fleet. They wanted a battle. We gave them a sun. The lead Scryer cruiser, its commander still screaming orders to push through, flew directly into the newborn star. Its shields, already strained by the plasma, were vaporized in a nanosecond. The ship itself followed a microsecond later, its hull dissolving into constituent atoms. It did not explode. It was simply unmade. The two destroyers flanking it were caught in the star's gravitational pull and immense heat. One was torn apart by tidal forces, its spine snapping as it was dragged into the stellar furnace. The other managed to execute a frantic emergency reverse burn, but its entire forward half was melted into slag, a crippled, glowing ruin tumbling away into space. Malakor, on the second cruiser, watched in utter horror as half his fleet was annihilated by an impossible event. He had come prepared for tricks of light. He had not come prepared for his enemy to create a star. "Hard to port, all engines emergency power," he shrieked. His ship, along with the sole surviving destroyer, veered away, their hulls glowing cherry red from the star's proximity. They fled not in a tactical retreat, but in a panicked, headlong rout. The protostar, its fuel source thin and its gravitational coherence artificially induced, was unstable. It burned furiously for another 10 seconds, a blazing monument to human ingenuity, before it sputtered and died, collapsing into a dissipating cloud of cooling gas. Silence once again descended on the bridge of the Vindication. The crew stared at the main screen, at the space where a star had just been born and died, taking half an enemy fleet with it. The cost of this victory was measured in fuel and energy reserves. The gravitic projectors had drained them to a critical level. "Fleet power is at 30%. Admiral Lysias reported calmly. "We are vulnerable." "They are not coming back, Lysias," Rostova said, her voice filled with a weary certainty. "The lesson is complete. The universe remembers those who can make stars." She had defeated one ultimatum with a mirror and a second, more violent one with a lesson in astrophysics. She had protected the convoy, saved her former enemies, and driven off a punitive fleet, all without firing a single traditional weapon at a live ship. She had held to her ethos. Mercy with teeth. Begin repairs, she ordered, her voice finally showing a trace of the immense strain she had been under. And get me a full report on our new passengers. See to their comfort. They have been through a great deal. Commander Jian looked at Rostova, her usual professional calm mixed with a deep, profound respect. Admiral, no one has ever done that before. Creating a temporary star as a weapon. It's not in any textbook. Then we will write a new one, Rostova replied. Her gaze was distant, looking out at the stars, but not just at the tactical reality. She was looking at the future, a future she was trying to build. One impossible choice at a time. A textbook about how to win without becoming the monster you fight. The final mystery had been revealed. The vented plasma was not waste, it was ammunition. The gravitic projectors were not towhooks, they were a crucible. And the payoff was a victory so absolute, so unexpected, that it would echo through the Scryer ascendancy for generations. It was a victory of the mind over doctrine. A choice given is more powerful than an order obeyed. Aboard the Vindication, the silence on the bridge was a strange mix of awe and exhaustion. The ghost of the man-made star still seemed to burn behind the crew's eyes, a retinal after-image of impossible power. The low, resonant hum of the ship's systems felt different now, weaker, like the slow heartbeat of a runner after a marathon sprint. Power levels were critical, but the void outside was for the first time in hours clear of immediate threats. The fleeing Scryer ships were now just fading sensor ghosts. Their panic-stricken retreat a more profound victory than their destruction would have been. Damage control teams report. All systems are stabilizing. Jian said, her voice a low murmur that barely disturbed the quiet. The gravitic projectors are offline for at least 12 hours. We drained their capacitors completely. The cost was tangible, a fleet, with its most unique tool temporarily broken. But it had been spent to purchase the lives of thousands both in the convoy and on the enemy ship. A fair trade, Rostova replied, her hands resting on the cool metal of the command rail. She turned her attention from the tactical display to a new window Lysias had opened, a live feed from Hangar Bay 3. It showed the first of the Scryer survivors, their gray uniforms stark against the clean white interior of the human ship. They were disarmed, bewildered, and huddled together, a sea of defeated soldiers, adrift in an ocean of alien compassion. Their war was over. Ours had just changed. Sub-Commander Kael was among them. He looked up at the human medics moving through the crowd, offering water nutrient packs and treating minor injuries with calm efficiency. There was no gloating, no threats, no collars. There was only a quiet professional concern that was more disorienting than any hostility he had been trained to expect. He saw one of his junior officers, a young woman barely out of the academy, accept a thermal blanket from a human corpseman, her hands trembling. This single simple act of kindness was a more powerful weapon than the protostar that had shattered his fleet. It dismantled a lifetime of indoctrination. Admiral Lysias's crystalline voice cut through her thoughts. The survivors are disoriented, but compliant. However, their physiological markers indicate extreme stress and ingrained suspicion. Direct interaction is inadvisable until they have had time to acclimate. They don't have time, Lysias Rostova countered. Their entire worldview was just broken. We must give them a new one to hold on to before fear and dogma fill the void. Patch me through to the Hangar Bay comms. Audio only for now. Their fear is a wound. Truth is the medicine. Acknowledged. You are broadcasting to all Hangar Bays currently holding Scryer personnel. Rostova took a breath. This is Admiral Eva Rostova. I am speaking to the surviving crew of the Voice of Inevitability. I know you are afraid. I know you have been taught to hate and fear us. I want you to look around you. You are not prisoners. You are survivors. And you are safe. In the hangar, every scryer froze their eyes, turning toward the overhead speakers. Kale held his breath, listening. Your commanders sent you here with an ultimatum, a demand built on the threat of violence. Rostova's voice continued calm and measured. Their doctrine told them this was strength. When their plan failed, they sent another fleet not to rescue you, but to execute you, to hide the failure of that same doctrine. We intervened. We did not do this to make you our prisoners. We did this because the value of a life is not determined by the uniform it wears. Each word is a brick in a new foundation. We are the Terran Alliance. We do not conquer. We do not issue ultimatums. When we are threatened, we teach. We teach with numbers, with light, and when necessary, with fire. But the lesson is always the same. There is a better way than rule by force. You are living proof of that lesson. Rest. Recover. We will speak again soon about your future, a future you now have the freedom to choose. The broadcast ended. A profound silence filled the hangar bay deeper than the one on Rostova's bridge. Kyle looked at the faces of his crew. The fear was still there, but it was being replaced by something else, something fragile and terrifying and new. A flicker of hope. He had a choice. They all had a choice. That was the most powerful and dangerous idea a scryer could ever encounter. That was a significant gamble, Admiral Lysias noted coolly. You are seeding a potential ideological insurgency within a traumatized military population. I'm planting a forest, Lysias. Rostova corrected. Let's see what grows. The deck plates beneath her feet were still the ship's energy crisis, making every system run at minimum. The silence was unnerving, a held breath on a fleet-wide scale. We have given them shelter. Now we must show them a path, Commander Gian Rostova ordered, turning back to the business of command. I want a secure engineering team to board the Dreadnought. Their priority is to access the main data core. I want to know everything about the Scryer Ascendancy's ultimatum doctrine. I want logs, records, targets, results. I want the entire history of this brutality. A high-risk mission, Admiral Gian replied. The ship is unstable. There could be automated defenses, booby traps. That ship is more than a prize of war, Rostova insisted. It's a witness. Its testimony could be the key to ending this conflict before it truly begins. Take every precaution, but get me that data. Gian nodded, her expression grim but determined. Aye, Admiral. I'll lead the team myself. This was the next phase of the plan. The battle was won, the survivors secured. Now it was time to collect the evidence. The mystery of the Dreadnought's history was about to be unsealed, and the payoff would be the ammunition for the final confrontation. Their ghosts will testify against them. Hours bled into a day. The Third Fleet became a hive of activity. Repair crews worked tirelessly to restore the taxed power systems. Medical teams processed the 2,000 Scryer survivors, moving them to more comfortable temporary quarters. The civilian convoy, having been escorted to a safe orbit on the far side of the planet, began broadcasting messages of gratitude that echoed through the fleet, reminding every crew member of exactly what they had fought for. Aboard the derelict Voice of Inevitability, Gian's team navigated wreckage-strewn corridors, the air thick with the smell of cold metal and spilled coolant. Emergency lights cast long dancing shadows, turning the dead ship into a mechanical haunted house. They bypassed fried circuits and sealed off breached sections, making their way slowly toward the vessel's hardened data core. The ship was a tomb, a testament to the suicidal arrogance of its commanders. Back on the Vindication, Rostova accepted an invitation to meet with a representative of the survivors. Sub-Commander Kyle was brought to a quiet observation lounge, a room with a large viewport looking out onto the nebula-dusted void. He was flanked by 2 unarmed human guards who stood at a respectful distance. He was not in chains. He was an officer being treated as such. "He is a key. We must find the right lock." Admiral Kyle said, his voice hoarse. He still seemed stunned, his eyes taking in the clean lines of the human ship, so different from the brutalist functional design of a scryer vessel. Sub-Commander Rostova greeted him with a simple nod. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. We do not understand." Kyle began his words a clumsy rush. "Why? Why do all of this? You defeated us. You could have destroyed the ship taken prisoners. This kindness is illogical." "Is it?" Rostova asked, her gaze steady. "We saved a convoy of families from an unprovoked threat. We disabled the weapon used against them. When your own people came to murder you for failing, we protected you. Which part of that? Seems illogical." "The protection part," Kyle admitted. "We are your enemies." "You were," Rostova corrected gently. "An enemy is someone who presents a current and active threat. Right now, you are a survivor. Your government, the one that sent you here and then tried to erase you, is my enemy. Their doctrine is my enemy. The enemy is a belief, not the believer." The simplicity of the logic struck KL with the force of a physical blow. He had been raised to believe that the state and the individual were one. To separate them was an alien concept. He looked out the viewport at his crippled ship, a massive dark shape against the stars. It looked like a corpse, a failed idea given form. "What do you want from us?" Kale finally asked the question a whisper. Nothing Rostova said, and the answer surprised him. "I want nothing from you. I want something for you. The chance to choose. We will soon be presenting our findings, the story of what happened here, to the Galactic community. You and your crew have a unique perspective. You can confirm the truth, or you can remain silent. The choice, as always, will be yours." Before Kyle could respond, Rostova's personal comm chimed. It was Gian. "Admiral, we're in. We have the data core. And you need to see this. The logs are extensive. Hundreds of ultimatums. Dozens of worlds pacified. They kept perfect records. It's a ledger of atrocities written in their own hand. A cold reckoning awaits." "Bring it home," Commander Rostova said, her voice grim. The final piece of the puzzle was in her hands. Just then, a red alert flashed on the lounge's secondary display. Commander Valerius's voice came over the ship-wide comm. "Admiral to the bridge. We have an incoming message. Priority 1 from the Scryer Ascendancy High Command. It's being broadcast on all galactic emergency frequencies." The third and final escalation had begun. The Scryers were making their move on the galactic stage. Rostova met Kyle's gaze. "It seems your former commanders are about to make your choice for you. Their ultimatums echo in a chamber of their own making." Rostova strode onto the bridge, the controlled tension of the room immediately focusing on her. Valerius patched the incoming Scryer transmission to the main view screen. The face that appeared was old, severe, and etched with the absolute certainty of a lifelong zealot. This was Grand Marshal Tyrok, the architect of the ultimatum doctrine itself. To the entity calling itself the Terran Alliance. Tyrok's voice boomed, dripping with contempt. "You have committed an act of unprovoked aggression against the Scryer Ascendancy. You have stolen our property and abducted our citizens. This will not stand. The camera pulled back to show Tyrock standing before a vast assembly of scryer captains, a show of unified, menacing power. Here is our final decree, Tyrock declared, his voice rising. You have 24 standard hours to return the vessel. Voice of inevitability and every scryer crew member, unconditionally. Failure to comply will be considered a declaration of total war. We will extinguish your colonies, burn your fleets, and salt the stardust where your worlds once orbited. There will be no negotiation. The ledger will be balanced with your extinction. The count begins now. The galaxy holds its breath. The transmission ended, but the threat lingered, a poison in the air. On the bridge, the crew was silent, the weight of the ultimatum pressing down on them. A full-scale war with the scryer ascendancy would be a catastrophe costing billions of lives. All our calculations confirm the scryer military advantage in a prolonged multi-front war. Lysias stated its lattice of light pulsing with grim data. They are capable of carrying out their threat. The conflict triangle was now at its sharpest point. Rostova's moral line, protect the survivors, expose the truth, was in direct opposition to Tyrock's ultimatum doctrine, with Lysias's cold calculus screaming that the logical path was to submit to avoid annihilation. This was her final test. Her arc from restraint to righteous decisiveness was about to reach its peak. They are trying to do to the Alliance what they did to the convoy, Gian said, her voice tight with fury. Hold a gun to our head and expect us to fold. They have made one critical error, Rostova said, her voice cutting through the fear. She looked calm, her resolve forged into something unbreakable. They assume we see this as a military problem. They are still trying to win a battle. We are going to win the argument. We will not answer in steel, but in truth, Lysias Rostova commanded, turning to the AI. You have the Dreadnought's data core. I want you to work with Commander Valerius. Prepare a broadcast packet. I want every log file, every casualty report, every world pacified under the ultimatum doctrine, compiled and cross-referenced. I want video from our hangar bays showing your medical teams treating their survivors. I want audio of my offer of aid. She then looked at Gian. And I want the tactical data from the battle. I want a full, unedited playback of the Punitive fleet arriving not to rescue but to destroy their own ship. Her gaze swept the bridge. And finally, I want to give Sub-Commander KL and any other survivor who wishes to speak an open, unedited channel. Valerius looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. Admiral, you're not going to answer their ultimatum. No, Rostova said, a dangerous smile touching her lips. I'm going to put theirs on trial, in front of the entire galaxy. Their own history will be the weapon that defeats them. The next few hours were the most frantic the Vindication had ever seen. Lysias's processing cores ran hot, weaving trillions of data points into a single cohesive narrative. Valerius and his communications team built the broadcast packet, a weapon made of pure information. In the temporary quarters, Kael spoke with his fellow survivors. He told them of Rostova's offer. He did not command them. He simply laid out the choice: to remain silent and let the ascendancy speak for them, or to speak for themselves for the first time in their lives. The response was overwhelming. With 6 hours left on the scryer ultimatum clock, Rostova gave the order. Broadcast it. Valerius's fingers flew across his console. Broadcasting, Admiral. On every channel. We're pushing it through every public data hub from here to Sol. The information bomb detonated across the galaxy. It started with the cold official logs from the Voice of Inevitability. Planet after planet, civilization after civilization, faced with the same brutal choice: submission or annihilation. The Scryer's own meticulous records damned them a dry bureaucratic accounting of interstellar bullying and genocide. Then came the tactical playback of Rostova's battle. It showed her fleet's restraint, the use of decoys, the precise, non-lethal disabling of the dreadnought. It showed her immediate offer of aid. Then it showed the arrival of Malakor's fleet, and the data was undeniable. Their weapons had been locked onto the crippled dreadnought, not the human ships. Their own ships tell the tale. Finally, the broadcast switched to the faces of the Scryer survivors. Kyle spoke first, his voice steady. He described the ultimatum, the defeat, and the terror of learning that their own fleet was coming to execute them. He spoke of the human medics, the lack of chains, the offer of choice. Dozens more followed, a chorus of voices bearing witness not to their capture, but to their liberation. Rostova's broadcast was not a plea for help. It was a verdict. She had created a system-scale trap, not of light or gravity, but of context and truth. She had turned the Galactic communications network into a courtroom, and the Scryer's ultimatum doctrine was the defendant. She forced the issuer of the ultimatum to face the cost not in ships, but in legitimacy. The cost was their honor. The ascendancy was silent. Grand Marshal T-Rock issued no response. The 24-hour clock continued to tick down, but it no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a countdown to their own self-destruction. Other galactic powers, long cowed by the Scryers, began to issue statements. First cautiously, then with growing confidence. They condemned the ultimatum doctrine. They praised the Terran Alliance's restraint and moral clarity. A coalition began to form, not for war, but for containment. They demanded a response. The galaxy gave them one. When the timer reached 0, there was no Scryer attack. Their fleets were recalled to their home systems not to launch a war, but to quell internal dissent. The broadcast had shattered the foundation of their power, the belief in their own righteousness. Their military was built on doctrine, and that doctrine was now exposed as a lie. The ultimatum was broken. A week later, the first official communiqué arrived from a newly formed Scryer Council. Grand Marshal Tyrock had been deposed. The ultimatum doctrine was being officially and publicly rescinded. They requested a diplomatic conference to arrange the peaceful repatriation of their citizens and to discuss war reparations to be paid by them. The institutional consequence was locked. On the public galactic ledger, the ultimatum doctrine was now officially classified as a crime against sapience. Its privileges revoked, its practitioners subject to inter-system sanction. A new precedent is written in the stars. Aboard the Vindication, a quiet sense of victory settled over the crew. They had faced down a tyrant not by becoming more ruthless, but by being more resolute in their own principles. They had won the war by refusing to fight it on their enemy's terms. The cost had been a strained fleet, a handful of wounded crew, and sleepless nights. But the victory was a future where fewer would have to face the choice between submission and death. Rostova stood on her bridge, watching the civilian convoy, now joined by an honor guard from a newly allied species, finally making its approach to the green and blue world of Kepler 186f. On her main screen, a public tally from the Galactic Concord confirmed the unanimous ratification of the Rostova precedent, outlawing ultimatums as a tool of statecraft. Her mirror arrays, long since repaired and recalibrated, sat dormant and cool, their crystalline structures settling to a dull, peaceful pewter. She had been a warrior, a rescuer, a physicist, and a prosecutor. Now she was simply a guardian, watching over the hope she had secured. It was never about the weapon in your hand, but the choices you offered. It was not enough to reflect an enemy's fire back at them. You had to show them a reflection of their own soul and offer them the chance to be better. We sent a mirror to show them their face and a ledger to show them the cost.